Hi everyone, how are you? Great to be back on Facebook Live and an amazing opportunity to connect with you guys. As always, I enjoy being here. I enjoy sharing knowledge. I really enjoy sharing knowledge when it's highly relevant to people that I've worked with during the week. So something that's been continually popping up and something that I worked with over the last few years is the topic of bipolar. And there's a lot of different ways of approaching this topic. And if you look at it from an allopathic point of view, it'll be a chemical and hormone imbalance. I definitely agree with that. There are chemicals and hormones that move outside of the regular stream of balance. Yet our science today is yet to prove what actually is a balance within a human dynamics and what would be considered to be an unbalance, because we don't really have a concrete sign of that. So what I'm going to talk about is what are the things that you can do within the psychology of your own mind to create much more of a balance within inside of yourself, so you experience much less bipolar-like states. And I've been able to assist hundreds of clients to not only apply this, but also have an opportunity to do it on a daily basis and self-manage themselves. We're talking about tools and resources and tips and things that have worked with clients to assist them within the realm of extreme highs and extreme lows. As always, thank you for joining. Feel free to share and like and connect and interact while I'm live. Some of you may watch this later, but if you're live now, feel free to interact and let me know if there's any questions that you have or anything that I'm discussing or that I bring up that you feel is relevant to yourself or somebody that you care about. So I'm going to start off with the usual format. I'm going to define the topic. Bipolar, I'm going to label as addictions to monopolars, mono being one and pole one side of the pole. So we can see the universe in a state of balance and equilibrium and equanimity, where we see a 1-to-1 ratio of positive to negative, and we're grateful for what occurs within our lives in any moment in space-time, over past, present, or future. Or we can see the world and label things outside of us as perceivably positive, perceivably negative. This is where we exaggerate the positive or exaggerate the negative. Now, each one of these perceptions, and I'm going to call this a perception because if I have an event that occurs or some kind of activity in a space with a group of people, what you'll quite often find is, let's say somebody gets robbed in a room with 10 people. One person may be traumatized forever. Another person may laugh and not really feel that anything's going on. And hi, Anthony Babuto, great to see that you're alive. And there may be a range of people in between. So there was a robbing that occurred, that's the external event, but there's 10 different points of views in reference to that. And however the people that are seeing or perceiving the actual robbery take that and label what happened outside of them, they will have a different chemical and a hormone mix. In fact, if I ran tests on all individual 10 people, I would find out that they all have a completely different mix in terms of the chemicals and hormones that are running in their body. And you can even tell by asking them, how do you feel about this? And each individual person will give you a different analysis and outcome of how they perceived that event outside of them. So what I find out here is the range of all the different emotions that every person is experiencing is not actually due to the event outside of them, it's due to their perception of the event outside of them. So when we look at monopolar thinking, it's polarization, labeling things either good or bad, right or wrong. And it's just taking one side of the pole and ignoring the other side unwisely. Whenever we do that, we polarize the mind and we polarize the body. And this creates unrealistic thinking. So if you look at a lot of events and things that have occurred throughout your life, things that you thought were absolute stressings, days, weeks, months, or years later, you may have reflected back on that and thought, wow, there was actually quite some blessings in that. And it was only then when you could bring your mind into a balance of appreciating what it is that occurred and see how it assisted you that you can let go of it. So whenever we have addictions to positive thinking, we exaggerate the positive. And whenever we exaggerate the positive in a person, situation, event, job, or anything, we're really telling ourselves a lie. And I'll put this into a few contexts that may be relevant to you. I know that at the start of relationships, and I tackled the topic yesterday, where the real relationship begins when the honeymoon ends. And I labeled the honeymoon as addictions to all the positives. And once you actually get to know the person, you realize that nobody can live in that dynamics. That we date whole people with two sides, and both those sides are worthy of love. It's up to you to learn how to love both sides of that. And when we love people who they are, they become who we love. Just like when people love us authentically who we are. So if I met somebody tomorrow, say Renee and I broke up, metaphorically speaking, in case you're watching Renee, and let's say we broke up and I start dating somebody. So I go to Bondi or something and I meet a hot little chickie babe over there. And I come back and I say to you guys on live, she's all good, all hot, never mean, never ugly, always positive, never not positive. And I come up with a whole list of things. And for 10 minutes, I start bragging about a whole one-sided delusion. Everyone watching this would kind of be like, you're setting yourself up for failure there, Emmanuel. There is no person that can live within that dynamics. You're creating a fantasy, a one-sided version of this person. And the more that I exaggerate that fantasy and get addicted to that one-sided pole, the greater the probability that I'm going to be upset when the other side reveals itself. So when we exaggerate the positives in people, we increase the probability of bipolar style feelings towards them, because that addiction to one side is actually going to have them display the other side in order to bring us back into a realistic and rational mind. And a rational mind comes from the word ratio. So that's why when you're addicted to one side of the other, you're irrational, because you're seeing more positives. If I saw the ratio, you might be seeing 7 positives or 8 positives or 10 positives as compared to 1 negative. So it's a 7-to-1 ratio. So anything that you exaggerate the positive or the negative in, not only do you set yourself up for failure, you become completely irrational, but your thinking and your actions and everything else are really setting you up for a jump from extreme positive to extreme negative. And funnily enough, they counteract and balance each other out, because the negative that you experience later and can't get out of your mind constantly pops up in order to make sure that you see both sides of the equation. Life wants you to see both sides of every single equation so that you have all of the puzzle pieces to make the wisest and most rational decision in the ability to move forward. So I've got a Net's written something here. Bipolar is such a strong opinion. They are total opposites of what your partner feels, I think, and argue. Is it such strong opinions? Well, it matters what you mean by opinions, because I've worked with multiple clients that experience bipolar. The person that was experiencing the extreme highs and lows, it was how they were seeing and perceiving events outside of them and labeling it. And interestingly enough, when you spoke to their partners or people outside of them, quite often they would be the other side trying to rational and bring them back down to earth. So if it was what I said before, if I walk around and said, you know, Nanette's all negative, not nice, all of those things, I couldn't walk around to 100 people and do that, because I would eventually meet people that know you and say, well, she did this and that, etc., and they'd reveal another side of you. And if I exaggerated you, made you all positive, then I'd probably find people that have been annoyed and irritated at you as well. So the reality is that there's two sides. And the faster a person experiencing bipolar can bring their mind to experience both sides, it restores wellness to the body. And this even goes physiologically. See, our central nervous system being the brain, it sends signals down to the autonomic nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system regulates chemicals and hormones. Quite often what we're calling bipolar, the extreme highs and lows, are the emotional responses and the chemical responses inside of the body. There's a common thing in society where we actually label the way the person feels as the actual symptom. And we'll say, you know, that person's got depression, and the feeling is labeled as depression. I can't help but think it's only one aspect, and it's the final kind of straw in a list of actions and things that occur. It first starts within the mind when the person labels whatever it is outside of them. And once we label something, that feedback from the mind must then go down to the autonomic nervous system, and it goes by a ratio of perception. So I've discussed this in the past, but I'll mention it now. Imagine something happens outside of me, and I have a sheet of paper on my right-hand side and one on my left. And after the event has happened outside of me, that once again, if there were 10 people in a room, 10 people would have 10 different ways of evaluating that. I say to myself, I'm going to write all the positives on one side, all the negatives on the other. And then when I look at them, I come up with a ratio. I'm seeing 6 negatives to 1 positive, for example. And if I looked at everyone else's sheets, the 10 other people in the room, I could have 4 to 1, 7 to 1, 8 to 1. And they could be differences of more positive to negative or negative to positive. But if I just go back to mine and I've got 6 negatives to 1 positives, that ratio of perceptions, meaning the ratio in which I see and perceive the external world outside of me, not the way it is, but the way I'm labeling the way it is, that comes into my perceptions, gets labeled by the central nervous system. That feedback gets sent down all the way through your body. That's why what you think you feel. And the autonomic nervous system, which its job is to regulate chemicals and hormones, will now create the chemicals and hormones directly proportionate to the ratio of perceptions outside of it. So if it's an extreme like 6 to 1 and I'm really fearful, it's going to give me the emotions and the chemicals and hormones to make fear. Because fear, happiness, sadness, all of those, so you look at exaggerations, minimizations, resentments, guilt, shames, they all feel different. They're like a different cocktail inside of the body because they're different mixes of chemicals and hormones actually utilizing different organs in order to create those mixes. But not only are they different mixes, but each individual one of those can be strong or weak. It's kind of like a shot at a bar. If I have a 6-to-1 ratio, that's a very extreme when I look at the ratio between the positive and the negative. Therefore, it's like taking a strong shot at the bar. Whereas a 3 or a 2-to-1 ratio, I'm probably not going to feel such an extreme high or low. It's going to be more of an irritation or a frustration. So the body is actually playing out in accordance to the perceptions of the mind and how we're seeing and labeling and perceiving things externally outside of us. And if we go from extremes of extreme positive thinking and we set unrealistic expectations of ourselves, others, situations, events. I even worked with a girl. I did a 30-minute complimentary consultation call. This was amazing. And the particular friend of mine, when we spoke on the phone, she said, Emmanuel, I've got a job interview in about a week from now, and I'm feeling real anxiety towards the job interview. And I said, you're not feeling anxiety towards the job interview. You've got anxiety towards something negative happening in the job interview, and you're focusing on that. So what is it? And she said, well, I really think this job is going to be an extreme positive for me. And I said the same advice that I've been giving to you and everyone else during my live talks. And I said, there's never a positive without a negative in any aspect of the universe. This job has equally as many positives and negatives. And the fact that you're experiencing a anxiety, which is a future fear, is because you're thinking that there are more positives than negatives and you're scared of losing it. I said, but if you see equally as many negatives, you'll actually be grateful whether you get the job or not. And I would rather be grateful now all the way up to the job in a week or 2 weeks than sacrifice the here and now for 10 minutes in the future. That means I didn't live all the way leading up to that. 2 weeks of not really living and my heart racing and increasing the aging process. So we got to work on that phone call. I had 30 minutes and I said, let's go, go, go. So we started to go through and I said, you're exaggerating the positive worth of this job. And I love my job, but there is no job in the world that has all positives and no negatives. So what are the negatives? Let's look at all 7 areas of life. And her and I looked at it and she said, well, I just started dating this guy for the last 6 months. And if I start this job, it means I'm really not going to get a chance to connect with him. And I'm not going to get a chance to connect with my girlfriends on the weekend. And it means that for the next year, I'm going to have to dedicate so much time, I'm not even going to see my family. And we went da-da-da-da-da-da and spent a good 10 minutes seeing all the negatives and what brought her down to a more rational thinking because she saw the reality and the actuality of what it would mean to have that job. Then I took where she is here and now. And I said, I know that you're inspired by this job, but what blessings and what absolute benefits do you have of where you are right now? Because you're minimizing that and you were exaggerating the job. We've brought that down. Let's make sure you're present and here and now. And she said, well, I've been working on my fitness. I feel absolutely amazing. I get to meet this amazing guy that I'm growing a relationship with. I'm very calculated in my timetable. It's inspiring me to do more work. And we went da-da-da-da-da. We brought the future job down to a balanced state where she was rational and saw both sides. We took where she currently was and made that balance and increased the value of that instead of being resentful towards it. And when we were done, I asked her, how's your anxiety? And she laughed. She goes, I'm not really feeling it, to be honest. I'm feeling really grateful for where I am, and I'm also inspired for the potential of the future. But if I don't get that job, I'm actually really inspired by the possibilities of what I can get that may fit into my timetable better. So she got present in the here and now instead of some imaginary point in the future where she was exaggerating one side of the other. So funnily enough, her exaggeration of the positive of the job was creating her exaggeration of the negative of not getting it. They were both coinciding and playing out physiologically in her body. Know that anything you exaggerate the positive in occupies time and space in your mind and occupies time and space in your body. That's not what's wrong with you. It's your mind and body letting you know that your autonomic nervous system is going way out of control and just producing chemicals and hormones at a crazy rate. And it wants you to restore the wellness of the body and bring that back into a state of balance. So just like you may live in an apartment, I know this is a small apartment that Renee and I live in. The apartment, if whether the temperature goes too high or too low, we feel it. So if you exaggerate the positives and infatuate with someone or a situation and you're minimizing yourself, your body's going to let you know. It's going to give you feedback to let you know, this doesn't feel like you right now. You're feeling a lot different. And if you exaggerate the negative, it's going to have pain. It's a kickback to let you know, come on, let's get back to a rational mind. And if you do not listen to that. You also have, just like a big screen TV, your psychology, your mind. It holds on and it sticks. That's why when you're really infatuated with somebody, you can't get them out of your mind. When you're infatuated with a job, you can't get it out of your mind. When you're infatuated with a situation or a product or some kind of purchase, you can't get it out. It's letting you know. These are the areas that are imbalanced and it's throwing your whole body out. So I see bipolar as addictions to monopolars, positive thinking without a negative, negative without a positive, or some range in between, but not being able to find that flat line right in the middle where you have true gratitude and appreciation. Just like that phone call I took with that amazing friend of mine. But she had the opportunity to become present and grateful for now, see both sides of it, present and grateful for the future, see both sides of that, and just live her life and really utilize the people, situations, events, and maximize all 7 areas on the magnificence and the journey through her life. So if you or someone that you know is experiencing addictions to monopolars and having trials and tribulations trying to get their mind to see both sides, there's no reason why they need to take weeks, months, or years to be able to equilibrate and bring the mind into balance. I watch clients do it in days and hours on a weekly basis. So I invite you to share some of those people with me, and I'd love to have a conversation for 10 or 15 minutes and let them know what options are available, and also let them know how they can take their lives to the next level. There's a magnificence and a beauty in seeing both sides of life. It's like collecting all the puzzle pieces, observing the world from a higher vantage point and looking down through the eyes of gods. And I'd rather look down through the eyes of gods and understand the magnificence and collect all the puzzle pieces in life than label it one side or the other and experience all kinds of shames and guilts and emotional trials and tribulations within my body and mind, taking me away from being inspiring and inspiring others through the events that have occurred in my life. So every human being is worthy of love, and I see love as an appreciation of both sides. I'd love to show you and those that you care about how to appreciate all sides of their life, regardless of what labels they've been given. So thank you very much. I hope that's been inspiring to you. Thank you to everyone that's connected. I look forward to our next live chat. Share, like, connect, and if there's anyone that you think could utilize some of this wisdom, inbox them and let them watch the video as well. Ciao.